tell, do you see the road? I'm out to my soul into the size whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 8th part of, What If Harry Potter Meets High School DxD. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Asian Lion Heart 310 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Live and never come back. Otherwise I swore on my life, I will hunt every last one of you before ending your pathetic existence slowly and painfully. Harry growled at the magicians who hastily nodded before disappearing as fast as they could, no wanting to anger him even more than he already was. Harry stood there, watching the spot where the magicians previously were before looking at the sky. Behind him, Cypherfics got rid of the barrier he created to protect everyone earlier, and Harry's girlfriends made their way toward him. But they barely made a couple of steps that Harry changed into his werelion form to let out an earth-shaking roar. Gasper, Gabriel, Azazel, Valley and Michael stared at the 10-feet-tall dark creature with wide eyes of shock, surprise, amazement and curiosity, as the former's eyes were shining with admiration at how strong and majestic Harry looked in this form. Drake, who was still on Issei's arm, couldn't help but comment, "Show off," which caused his wielder to shot his gauntlet an amused smirk. When the werelion stopped roaring, it slowly turned around to face the spectators as its body was slowly returning back to its human form. Azazel, Michael, Valley, Gasper and Gabriel all watched with stupor when his torn clothes went back to cover his body before returning to their previous state as if nothing happened. Azazel was really curious of this type of magic but didn't dare question the young man who would surely skin him alive for doing so. Gabriel was becoming even more attracted to Lord Peveril. He was just like the rumors said, strong, handsome, polite, and really fierce when angered. The seraph couldn't help herself and instinctively licked her lips as her eyes were still locked on Harry, who by the time was back to his human appearance. Harry brushed the remaining dust on his clothes before looking back at the group who were staring with disbelief and shock. Seeing this, the green-eyed young lord pinched the bridge of his nose with a groan before looking back at them. "Did you enjoy the show?" he asked them with a teasing grin. I don't even know what to say," Issei stuttered as he was looking for an appropriate answer. "You were amazing, Onizen," Asia inquired as she rushed at him before hugging his waist. Harry chuckled slightly before patting the top of her head, much to her pleasure. Asia was too cute and innocent for her own good. Era Harry-kun, you were so merciless it turned me on," Akeno inquired as she walked toward him before kissing him right on the lips, which he returned. Gabriel didn't know why, but at the sight she felt jealous. And it worsened when Seraphol made her way toward the handsome young lord to kiss him on the lips. She growled under her breath when she saw the Mao Leviathan kissing the young lord and right was feeling nothing but envy. Noticing what she was feeling, the seraph shook her head to regain her composure before going in thought, maybe Lord Peveril wouldn't adding her to his HRM? A smile grew on her face as it might not be too bad to share this handsome young man with someone else, as Gabriel had to admit that Seraphol was an appealing young woman and it was the same for the other girl. Back to Harry. He had just pulled his lips away from Seraphol, who shot him a radiant smile while Akeno gave him a stuck wink along with a lick on her lips. Rolling his eyes as her antics, Harry turned his head to look at the others present. "Sorry for the damages," Harry inquired sheepishly as he glanced at the crater he made and the tree destroyed by his latest attacks. "It's fine, Harry-kun, it can be fixed," Cypherfics replied with a shrug as it was not a big deal. Harry sighed in relief. He didn't want to pay for the damages he caused even if it was his fault. Don't get him wrong, he wasn't greedy when it comes to money, but sometimes it was a pain to pay for his mistakes. "That's good, now let's just hope nothing else would happen. I don't think I can endure pity things like Issei's perverseness or Azazel's bird brain." "Hey!" The two concerned yelled in denial as tick marks could be seen on their faces. Everyone else laughed with humor at Harry's words while the green-eyed young lord in question was grinning at his victims who shot him a dead/annoyed glare. Cypherfics shook his head to regain his composure before looking back at his fellow leaders. "Alright, let's finish the Mao Lucifer began to say before a feminine voice stopped him. Harry Kun. Harry froze dead on the spot with his eyes wide in shock and terror as his face was slowly draining itself of his color as he paled. The green-eyed young lord looked at his friends before asking in a hopeful tone. "Guys? Please tell me there is no girl with long back hair, black eyes standing behind me?" "There is," Kiba responded with a raised brow, wondering why Harry was in this state. "Please tell me she isn't wearing black Gothic Lolita fashion?" Harry asked them in fear as his face was becoming more pale. When they all nodded at him, he chuckled nervously before turning around to face the angry face of a certain infinite dragon who was tapping her right foot on the ground with narrowed eyes. "Hey Ophis, what are you doing here, love?" he asked her nervously as he was sweating bullets. Behind him, everyone stiffened before paling drastically as they all looked at the cute young girl who was apparently Ophis, the infinite dragon and one of the two strongest beings in existence, the other being Great Red. Ophis's eyes narrowed at her mate and he gulped silently in fright. "Don't tell me you forgot our date." Harry chuckled nervously in response while rubbing the back of his head as a sweat drop appeared on the left side of it. He and Ophis had planned this some times ago. But their date was nothing more than a mating night. However, thanks to what happened recently, he hadn't thought of it too much. Now he was in deep trouble. "I didn't love, I swear, but a lot of things happened and it kinda slipped out of my mind," Harry explained as best as he could as behind him, everyone was staring at him blankly, especially the girls. Ophis raised an eyebrow at this but kept her glare as she stared at her mate who was becoming more and more pale. "Oh. And please tell what was so important for you to miss our date, Harry Kun," she asked calmly with an undertone that sent shivers down everyone's spines, especially Harry's. "In short, Excalibur swords, fallen angels, peace treaty," Harry responded quickly as he glanced at his friends who seemed amused by his predicament. He sent them a small glare before looking back at Ophis when the infinite dragon spoke again. "That still doesn't excuse you, Harry Kun. Now give me a good reason to not punish you hard." Ophis asked her mate as she conjured some snakes in her hands. Gulping in fright as he realized that it was his end, he thought of the best manner to answer when suddenly he pointed at something behind her. "Look, it's Great Red." Ophis swiftly turned around to look behind her only to see nothing. Now that she wasn't looking at him, Harry used a big of his lion's side to run away as fast as he could, leaving behind a human-shaped cloud which was the only trace of his departure as a strange, beep-beep-like sound echoed in the background. "There's no dash," Ophis began to say as she turned around to look back at her mate only to see that he disappeared. Blinking a few times, she took a moment to realize that Harry fooled her. A deep growl escaped her throat as her pupils turned into slits. The devils, angel and fallen angel all flinched in fright when she looked at them. "Where did he went?" she asked them with a deep voice and they all pointed to their rights. "Harry, get back here!" Ophis cried out with anger as she floated in midair before dashing toward where Harry disappeared. Speaking of the young lord, he was running like no tomorrow as he tried to get as far away as possible from Ophis, whose voice echoed in the distance. When he heard her cries of anger, he ran even faster while thinking, "I can't believe she fell for this. Now I'm so dead." Meanwhile, at Ko Academy, everyone looked toward where the two disappeared with deadpan expression on their faces, unable to comprehend what just happened. "Should we go help him?" Kiba asked out loud to everyone who looked at each other before saying at the same time, "No." Only Gasper and Asia were against this as they were concerned for Harry, who was trying to survive against a furious Ouroboros dragon at his tail. The three factions went back to their previous business, completely ignoring Harry's cries in the distance, even if the young lord's friends were wincing each time they heard his cry in the distance. Time skip. Harry fell on his bed with a groan on pain. He and Ophis returned to Peveril Mansion a few moments ago and the house elves treated their MSTR's bruises as best as they could. The Ouroboros dragon hadn't taken kindly being fooled like this by her mate and made it really clear when she punished him. After the beating he received, he had to make a lot of apologies and promised to make up for her and shivered at the sight of her devious grin. Back to present, he was enjoying the softness of his bed when the front door of his room opened and he raised his head to see Ophis. She was naked and thanks to her shape-shifting abilities, she made herself taller with a much more voluptuous figure. Ophis? She didn't respond as she climbed on his bed, her eyes not looking away from him. Ophis? What are you doing? Harry began to ask but was interrupted by his mate when her lips crashed against his. Instinctively, Harry returned the gesture and a mmm escaped Ophis's mouth as she closed her eyes in pleasure as both of them were enjoying this little moment together. When they broke the kiss, Ophis licked her lips as she quickly removed his lowers much to Harry's slight annoyance. Ophis, not tonight. You said you would make it up to me. And I want you in me. Now. Ophis explained with a voice filled with lust as she eyed his throbbing PP who seemed eager to be used. Harry sighed deeply in both annoyance and regret for saying that earlier but now he had no choice as he must honor his promise. All right then. Smiling in happiness at her mate's words, Ophis instantly took Harry's PP with her right hand before eating it like it was a piece of candy. The young lord closed his eyes with a content sigh as he felt his mate eating his PP. Ophis, that feel good. Hearing this, Ophis stroked his PP a bit more before engulfing it inside her mouth with her tongue still liking its top. The more she ate on his large PP, the more he mmm her name, something she loved to hear from him. At the same time, her tips were hardening as she was busy taking care of his PP. After a few seconds, Ophis took his hard member out of her mouth before licking her lips. You taste so good, Harry-kun, she commented softly to herself as she stood up before pushing herself against. The two stared at each other's eyes for a moment before kissing on the lips, mmm with pleasure. For a moment they stayed like this, but then Ophis pulled herself away from Harry before backing away from him. He stared at her with a disappointed look on his face as he liked kissing her, but then his eyes widened by what she was doing. Ophis was now sitting on the bed and had spread her legs, revealing to him her wet womanhood. It wasn't the first time he saw it, but it was the first time the Ouroboros dragon offered it to him. Ophis? I want you, Harry, fill my now with your SMN. The infinite dragon god responded to him with a voice laced with lust and love. If that's what you want, milady, Harry replied back with a purr-like tone before bending down to kiss her legs while slowly making his way toward her womanhood. Ophis mmm at the feeling on his lips near her PP and looked up at Harry with a smile before mmm when he opened her PP's lips with his fingers. However, he didn't insert his PP ins. You like my PP, so it's fair for me to have a taste of you, my love, he inquired her when he saw her questioning frown. Harry then slowly lapped his mate's PP up and down with his tongue. Ophis mmm in pleasure as she gripped her melon, pinching her tips. Her actions caused her to become cornier as she placed her legs on Harry's shoulders, pushing him deeper against her PP. The young lord grinned at her before fastening his liking. Her mmm became louder at each lick he was giving her PP and she bitten her lips as the pleasure spreading through her body. Soon, Ophis exploded with a massive orgasm, sending some of her juices on Harry's face. He ate it off before looking at Ophis as she used her right feet to touch his face. Alright, Harry-kun, I want it inside me. Are you sure? I wouldn't be asking you this if I wasn't, you idiot. Harry chuckled with amusement at his mate's remark before positioning himself at her entrance. The tip of his PP slowly made its way inside her PP and a few seconds later, it was fully inside. Ophis mmm loudly as he started pending inside her, thrusting in and out repeatedly. Faster, Harry. It feels so good. Harry, at those words, fastened his pending and she screamed in pure pleasure. He got more turned on when he saw her melons jiggling around each time he pended inside her. Ophis's inside was tight, but it was warm and soft. The infinite dragon, for her part, was enjoying this so far. Ophis. I'm about to leak. Harry warned her through his teeth as he kept thrusting inside her. Leak inside me, Harry. Impregnate me. Here I leak. Harry cried out as his PP exploded inside her vagina, filling it with her warm juice. Slowly, He pulled his member out of her womanhood before falling back first into the bed while he took deep breath to calm himself down from the intensity of the orgasm. Ophis then laid down next to him before cuddling next to him with her head on his chest. It was incredible, Harry commented as he kissed the top of Ophis's head. Yes, it was, the infinite dragon replied back softly as she cuddled him. Then she used a hand to rub her belly before looking back at him and saying softly, "It was my first time and you made it unforgivable." "I would do anything for those I love, Ophis," Harry replied gently as he looked down at her with love. "I know, Harry-kun," the infinite dragon whispered back before the two of them kissed each other deeply on the lips. But then a cough caught their attention and they looked up to see Rainier and Tiamat completely naked. "Huh, girls, can we help you?" he asked them curiously, even if deep down he had a bad feeling about this. "Having fun without us, Harry-kun?" "How mean of you!" Rainier inquired as she slowly climbed on the bed alongside Tiamat. The Karma Dragon smiled at the young lord before licking her lips while saying seductively, "Now you need to be punished for such an outrage, don't you think, my dear?" Harry sighed deeply when he heard those words, and his last thought before everything went wild was, "It's going to be a long night. Time skip." "You wanted to see me, Surzex?" Harry asked the Mao Lucifer as the two of them sat in the mansion's library, drinking a cup of tea. A moment ago, Harry had received the visit of Surzex Lucifer himself and had welcomed him into his domain. The redhead had complimented his mansion and Harry accepted the praises with a nod of his head. After all, if the leader of the underworld himself went to see him, it was surely for business. "Yes, as you know, Harry-kun, me and the other Mao reopened Kuroka's case thanks to the memories your pensieve showed us. We discovered quite a lot. It seems we made a mistake and so we decided that Kuroka was now free of all charges." Surzex explained calmly but a relieved undertone as he drank some tea. "That's good news. Does Kaneko know about it?" "No, yet I thought that it was either Rias's job or yours to do it actually." "And why that?" Harry asked the redhead with a raised brow, curious about his interlocutor's answer. "One, because Rias is her king, and second because you are her Atoko if I heard her correctly last time," the Mao Lucifer replied with a small grin on his face. "Why do I have the feeling it's some sort of vengeance?" Harry asked to himself as he narrowed his eyes at the Mao. "Maybe because it is the third reason. Because of this, I have to endure more paperwork than usual. It's torture." Surzex complained like a child and Harry couldn't help but chuckle a bit. "I understand that, however, I wonder if Kuroka knows about this. If I were you, I would look for her and tell her the news. Now she won't have to hide anymore as her name is not cleared." "I will do just that now. Do you have something else to discuss?" "Not really, I just wanted to be a bit away from my duty." "Or away from your wife?" Harry asked him teasingly but with a look of understanding in his green eyes. "Isn't that the same thing?" Harry and him both laughed after those words left the redhead's mouth. Surzex loved Graphia, but she was really strict and could be really scary when angered. Again, all women were once they were in that state. "Anyway, I should go. As much as I would love to stay and chat with you, Harry-kun, Graphia would skin me alive if she notices my absence." "I know the feeling completely, Surzex. Good luck with your wife?" Harry inquired to the Mao Lucifer as the two of them shook their hands. "I will need it," Surzex replied as he disappeared through a red magical circle. Harry stared at the spot the Mao Lucifer disappeared before summoning the Elder Wand before opening his mouth while making a circle gesture with his right arm. Expecto Patronum. There, from the tip of the wand, appeared the shape of a bright silver, translucent gigantic Nemean lion who ran around the room for a moment before stopping in front of Harry. "Kuroka, if you receive this, then please meet me in the park near my home. I have news for you," Harry said to the Patronus before the Nemean lion went away to find the black-haired Nekishu. Muerte had taught him the Patronus charm and wasn't really surprised when his Patronus was a lion, as he was part lion. The deity taught him how to use his Patronus as a mean of communication in case Hedwig wasn't around. Conjuring the Elder Wand back inside him, Harry then left the library toward the mansion's front doors, but, before he could open them, someone called out for him. "Harry-kun. Where do you think you're going?" Groaning at his bad luck, the young lord turned around to find himself facing Rainier, who had her hands on her peach with a glare on her pretty face, while beside her was Ravel Phoenix, his pupil. After what happened the night before, Ophis went to who know where while Tiamat overslept. The last resident of the mansion, beside the house elves Asia, was with the occult research club. "I'm just going out for some time. I won't be long, promise." Harry replied calmly to the fallen angel, who stared at him inquisitively for a moment before nodding. "But Harry-sama, what about our lesson?" Ravel asked the young lord with a hint of disappointment in her tone. Before Surzex came, Harry was teaching the youngest Phoenix how to properly use her fire power. So far, the girl was doing okay, but she wanted to become stronger, and who was he to deny her her wish? "We will continue it once I come back, don't worry, little one. Take this as a break, however. If you still want to keep training, then in the library, there is a book about fire magic and you can learn some new attacks from it." Ravel's eyes shined at those words and nodded her head before dashing toward the library with an eager look on her cute little face. Her thirst for knowledge reminded him of Asia's when he taught his little sister in all but BLD some healing magic techniques. "I will keep an eye on her, Harry-kun. Good walk." Rainier inquired the young lord with a kiss on his lips before going after the blonde girl, but not without shooting Harry a warning glare. Harry sighed deeply at how overprotective his girlfriends were and left the mansion toward the park. He met Kuroka for the first time. When he arrived there, he instantly sat on a familiar white bench before waiting for the former SS class Stray Devil to show up. As he waited, he was thinking about something else. Ever since the fight at Kuo Academy, he felt like someone was watching him. A mule caught his attention and looked ahead to see a black she-cat approaching him with her hazel golden eyes. He recognized this cat instantly and shot her a welcoming smile as his green eyes looked at her. "I'm happy to see you again, Kuroka," he whispered to the kitten, who purred loudly in appreciation before turning into her human form. "I didn't know you missed me that much, handsome Naya," Kuroka inquired to him seductively as she sat beside him with her face inches away from his. "How could I not miss such a gorgeous kitten like yourself?" Harry replied back with a charming grin as he decided to play for a bit. Era, aren't you a sweet talker, Naya?" "I think a reward is in order for this, Naya," the black-haired Nekisha purred as she kissed him right on the lips. Much to her shock, he grinned before returning it. Blinking twice in surprise, Kuroka then smiled as she kissed him right back. The two kissed for a few seconds before pulling away from each other. "Seriously, Harry-kun, why did you call me here, Naya?" "A part of stuck me, Naya," the Nekisha asked the young lord with a curious raised brow as she licked her lips. She had clearly enjoyed the kiss and wanted to do it again, as this young man before her was too much of a catch to ignore. "First of all, you started this little game, kitty. Secondly, I came here to tell you a good news." The second sentence instantly caught Kuroka's curiosity as she looked at him dead in the eyes with attention, with her face inches from his. "And what is it, Harry-kun, Naya?" "The Maus had declared you free of all charges. You are no longer a murderer in the eyes of the devils." Harry responded with a happy smile as he looked at her. Kuroka froze as those words left his mouth, as her eyes were wide in shock. After a few seconds like this, seeing that she was giving no reactions, Harry became concerned and waved a hand in front of her eyes. "Earth to Kuroka. Earth to Kuroka. Can you hear me, kitty?" he called out to her, and his words seemed to work because she blinked twice. Then he yelped when he found himself being hugged tightly by an overjoyed Nekisha with his face pressed between her large but soft melons. "That's the best news I ever heard, Naya. Now I can finally see Chiron again, Naya." Kuroka began to say loudly in joy before looking down at Harry, whose face was still trapped between her melons. "And that's all thanks to you, Harry-kun, Naya," she added with gratefulness as she released him from her grip. The green-eyed young lord shrugged as if it wasn't a big deal, but then smiled at the Nekisha, whose joyful face warmed his heart. "I merely did what someone might have done in my PLA-, he began to say before a finger on his lip stopped him, courtesy of Kuroka, whose face was showing nothing but seriousness. "No, not many people would have done that for me, Naya. I was just a stray devil, Naya. Who was supposed to be killed on sight, Naya. But you helped me when no one else did, and just for that, Naya, I will always be thankful of you, Naya, Kuroka began to say in a serious tone before her face softened a bit. You are an amazing man, Harry-kun. You are rich, handsome, loyal, strong and compassionate, Naya. You are powerful enough to wipe out an army of magicians, and yet, you only use your power to protect those you care, Naya. Harry, however, froze when he heard the part about him wiping out an army of magicians and stared at her with shock. How do you know about Dash? He began to ask before being again stopped by the Nekashu. I was nearby, Naya. Since the day I met you, I started to have feelings for you, Naya. No one helped me before you came, Naya. I want to be part of your life, Harry-kun, Naya. I want you with me, Naya. Harry didn't know how to respond as he only stood there, looking at the Nekashu with stupor as she practically confessed her love for him. Sure, he had expected her to be thankful for him helping her, but he never thought that she would have feelings for him. Of course, that didn't mean that he wasn't honored to be loved by such a gorgeous woman. If that's what you want, my home has many rooms, Harry replied to her after a moment of silence with a soft smile on his face. Kuroka looked at him with shining eyes before pulling him into a passionate kiss, to which he wholeheartedly returned. The two of them completely ignored their surroundings as they were only focused on their current moment. The two stayed like this for a full minute before pulling away from each other, panting to catch their breaths. Whoa, you really are a good kisser, Harry-kun, Naya, Kuroka inquired the young lord with a stuck wink. I aim to please milady, he replied back teasingly with a small bow, eliciting a giggle from her, before adding gently, now let's go home, kitty. Yes, she whispered to him as she liked him seductively on the lips before the two of them left the park toward Peveril Mansion. Kuroka, despite having seen it before, was still amazed by the sight of the building and couldn't help but feeling happy to have the chance of living inside from now on. She followed after her lover when he led her inside before they were greeted by a strange creature with pointy ears. Did Mr. Harry had a good walk? The creature asked her lover with a feminine voice. Yes, Fanny, now I want to call everyone in the library, we have a new resident to welcome. The creature, whose name was apparently Fanny, looked at the Nekashu before bowing respectfully. Then she disappeared with a small pop after snapping her fingers. Blinking at what just happened, Kuroka turned her head to look at Harry questioningly. I will explain later, kitty, he promised gently as he extended an arm to scratch behind her ears. Kuroka blushed at the actions but would be lying to herself if she said it wasn't enjoyable and let out a purr of content to show it clearly. Sending her an amused grin, the young lord then led her toward the mansion's library where the two met up with Rainier and Ravel Phoenix. Harry-kun, who is she? The fallen angel asked her, and he was about to answer when the blonde stepped in. It's a SS stray devil who killed her king. Ravel said as her hands were slowly surrounded by fire. Kuroka flinched at the harsh tone, but then Harry took a step forward before glaring down at Ravel, who shivered at the glare she was receiving. Kuroka was a stray devil. But now she is cleared of all charges by the Four Mouths. Harry explained to his pupil, whose eyes widened in surprise as the news. And why is she here? Rainier asked the young lord with a raised brow as she crossed her arms over her bust. Because from now on, she is officially a resident of Peveril Mansion, Harry responded casually to the fallen angel, who nodded in understanding before smirking deviously. Adding a new girl in your HRM, Harry-kun? The green-eyed young lord shot her an annoyed glare, but her only response was a giggle as she was clearly not intimidated by the look. Kuroka smirked as she watched the exchange before looking at the fallen angel. How many girls Harry-kun had in his HRM, Naya? The Nikusho asked Rainier with a Cheshire grin. Harry sent the fallen angel a warning look, but she completely ignored him in favor of answering Kuroka's answer. Let's see, there are Ophis, myself, Tiamat, Seraphol, Akeno, Yasaka and you. But from what I heard from Asia, a seraph is interested in him. Harry groaned in pure annoyance as he pinched the bridge of his nose while closing his eyes. Rainier was really a pest sometimes. However, because he had closed his eyes, he hadn't noticed the look Ravel was sending his way, a look of jealousy which was noticed by Rainier and Kuroka but didn't comment about it. A few moments later, Tiamat entered the room and was introduced to Kuroka before the four girls went into deep conversation mostly about a certain green-eyed young lord. Harry, who was nearby, was feeling like he just made a huge mistake and wondered what will happen to him next. After all, his situation couldn't get any worse, right? Elsewhere. Japan. I always wanted to go there. A young woman with a pale heart-shaped face, dark twinkling eyes with short pink spiky hair said out loud as she and her companions stepped out of the airport. Her companions were two men who seemed amused by their comrades' behavior. The first one was 6 feet 2 inches tall inside with a pale face of brown hair even if there's some gray there and there. He sported a thin mustache and a rough beard while some scars could be seen across his face. It was Remus Lupin, a former friend of James Potter and one of the Marauders. The second was tall, well-built, darkly handsome man with fair skin, medium, lustrous black hair and an air of elegance. The man was none other than Lord Sirius Orion Black, head of the noble and most ancient house of Black, and like Remus, a former friend of James Potter and one of the Marauders. The two, like the Order of the Phoenix, had traveled around the world to find Harry, but unlike the other wizards, it was to warn the missing Potter of what the wizarding world planned to do to him. Sirius had spent years of his life looking for his godson but not once did he got a simple clue of his whereabout, even with the help of Remus's sharp senses. The two Marauders had been angered and outraged when James, their old friend, abandoned his own child to take care of the other, and the both of them broke every tie they had with the head of the Potter family. Sirius had taken his duty as the head of House Black and casted Narcissa and Bellatrix out of the family while reinstalling Andromeda and Nymphadora. Don't call me that. Tonks in. After that, Sirius made sure to rise House Black to its former glory with the help of Remus, Andromeda and Nymphadora. The Minister of Magic, knowing the Black's reputation, never tried to cross him and instead, like the coward he was, tried his best to stay in Sirius' good graces by doing almost everything he wanted. Sirius then told the Daily Prophet what James and Lily Potter did to their eldest son, Harry, years ago, and he was outraged by the lack of care the wizarding world gave at the news. He had forgotten that Squibs didn't have a good reputation here. So imagine his joy when, after Voldemort's confirmed resurrection, the news of Harry Potter being the boy who lived instead of his twin brother Jacob spread through the wizarding world. He had delighted to hear about the many howlers sent to Potter Manor and how shocked the same Potters he had been friends with more than just a decade ago. But then his joy turned into fury when he had winds of what Dumbledore and the Ministry planned to do, sending parties to look for the missing Potter before bringing him at all cost. He and Remus instantly traveled around the world to find Harry and warn him about the danger that was the Ministry of Magic, the Order of the Phoenix and the Death Eaters, who were also looking for the missing boy. Back to present, Sirius chuckled as he looked at Nymphadora Tonks, who had begged them to come with the two. Remus was just as amused by the Metamorphmagus antics. Really? Then glad you are happy then. You bet I am. Let's just hope Harry is here, Sirius couldn't help but inquired in a soft tone in case someone was listening to them. Remus and Tonks instantly looked at him with sad expression mixed with sympathy. They both knew how remorseful Sirius was, as it was his duty as godfather to take care of Harry, a duty denied by Albus Perceval Wulfric Brian Dumbledore and the Potters. We will found him Padfoot, I know we will, Remus said as he putted a hand on his friend's shoulder in an attempt to comfort him. It's just we already visited so many countries and so far we didn't find a single trace of our cub, Lord Black mumbled back almost with defeat. I know Padfoot, but don't give up yet. We will find him. We must. Remus replied to his old friend in a sterner tone. Yes, Sirius. Don't lost hope. I'm sure we will find him. Nymphadora inquired to her head of house. How can you be so sure? Sirius asked her with a curious raised brow. Feminine intuition, Tonks replied with a shrug. Of course, what else would it be? Sirius commented with a chuckle before yelping at the glare he received from the girl. Remus chuckled in amusement before going serious again as he said, Come on you two. Stop acting like children and let's move on. Sirius and Tonks glanced at each other before looking back at Remus and childishly pulling out their tongues. Rias sighed deeply in annoyance as he rubbed his head with a hand while listening to the other two's laughs. Sometimes I think like I'm the only adults in this group, he commented softly with a sigh. But apparently it was still loud enough for the others two to hear because they instantly stopped laughing to look at him while shouting in denial. "Hey!" Which caused Rias to laugh loudly with humor and the other two to pout like children. Some days had passed since Surzex came to Peveril Mansion and Harry was currently relaxing in his garden, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere around him, the chirping birds, the soft cool wind, the grasses ruffling against his skin. He wanted nothing more than to stay like this forever. A lot of things happened since Kuroka had been declared free of all charges by the four mouths of the underworld. For starter, the Black Nekashu had become, like Tiamat, Asia, Rainier and Ravel, a permanent resident of Peveril Mansion. Second, Harry had arranged a meeting between her and her sisters and things had been tense at first but thankfully it turned to the better in the hands as Kaneko/Chiron forgiven her older sister. The white-haired Nekashu had been warned about the Mao's decision and why her sister had killed her king. At first shocked, Kaneko still was wary of using senjutsu but after her meeting for her older sister let's just say her mind had changed a bit. When she asked Kuroka how she managed to convince the Maos to reopen her case, the Black Nikushu, in front of Rias' whole peerage, had explained that it was thanks to a certain, handsome green-eyed young man. Rias and her peerage had first were wondering who they were talking about when Kuroka lunged herself at the only guy in the room who could match this description, Harry Peveril Gryffindor Ravenclaw Slytherin Emrys the Fae. The young lord almost had his back broken because of the hug he received from Rias Rook Kaneko as the white-haired Nekashu didn't stop thanking him for helping her sister. However, the good moment had been ruined by Kuroka because she couldn't stop herself for saying she was now a member of the young lord's HRM. Harry wanted nothing more than to hide under a rock when everyone stared at him with gaping mouths except Issei who loudly complained that Harry was stealing his dream of being a HRM king. Thankfully for him, Ophis, when she heard about the new additions in the HRM by Tiamat, came to Peveril Mansion to confront her maid about it. Harry had been really scared at the emotionless face she had made when faced him. Why women had to be so DMN scary. The infinite dragon eyed Kuroka with inquisitive eyes before looking back at Harry who was really nervous at this point. To his shock and delight, Ophis had approved of the Black Nikushu and he had released a deep breath of relief after she said those words. Of course that didn't stop the Ouroboros dragon god to give him an earful about taking girls without her around. He had objected vehemently saying that it was girls who were looking for him not the contrary which was true. But Ophis had not been convinced but after Tiamat spoke to his favor she backed down for now. Today there was no school for him which was good because it had been a moment since the last time he had a break, between his moment with his girls, the occult research club, school, and JIS bad luck. He didn't have a lot of time for himself so he was really going to enjoy his alone time as best as possible. This morning, he received a message from Yasaka and in short, she wasn't happy that he never came to visit. Of course, he wrote a letter back stating that if they wanted they were free to come to Kuo and had sent Hedwig, his precious familiar and friend to give it to the leader of the Yukai faction. A part of this, many things came after the peace treaty between the factions. To begin, Azazel had respected his promise and was now more attentive and serious with his fallen angels and he sent a message to Rainier saying that she was welcome to return among them. The fallen angel had refused stating that she was happier with the love of her life. Harry and Azazel, while disappointed, had accepted her reason as he didn't want it to have a furious Lord Peveril on his back not after what he did to Kokobile, Cataria and her army of magicians. Another thing that happened after that day was the eventual visit of a certain seraph. Yes, the angel Gabriel, with the approval of Michael, would sometimes stop by to visit Harry. The young lord had been shocked to see her at his doorstep but then started to curse/thank whatever deities after she kissing him right on the lips under the eyes of Kuroka, Ravel, Tiamat and Rainier. Of course she had been accepted into the HRM by the others girls and again, Harry didn't get a say in this, much to his internal frustration as he sometimes wondered if they weren't doing this just to annoy him. However, what he didn't expected were the occasion glares Ravel sent to the other girls where they hogged him. He could perfectly see what she was feeling through them, anger, envy, and jealousy were the top ones. To avoid creating conflicts, Harry made sure to give everyone the same amount of affection, even Ravel through to his opinion she was still too young to do more. The Phoenix girl seemed to like the attention he was giving her, and he had also noticed that she was kinda close to Asia, as the two would spend a lot of time together when the former nun wasn't with the occult research club. Harry had also grew really close with the little damper Gasper and was still teaching him how to properly use his scared gear. The girl-like boy seemed quite attached to Harry, as the damper saw him as an older brother, something the young lord wholeheartedly accepted. He even taught the damper some little tricks he could use on occasion, and even better, he introduced Gasper to BLD-flavored lollipops, and the damper would sometimes be handed some whenever he was doing something good or progressing in using his power. Harry, ever since he befriended the damper, had bought some of those sweets as he was curious of how it was made. After some experiments in his lab, he managed to recreate them but could also add flavors. Now people could enjoy those BLD-flavored lollipops added with another flavor of their choices: chocolate, strawberry, banana. Of course he had to make sure it was safe for vampires or any type of creatures who fed on BLD, so he asked Gasper to taste them. To his surprise, the damper grew fonder of his sweets. With the help of Surzex he started to sell his sweets and got a lot of compliments from them. The vampires were the ones who bought those sweets the most, being creatures who fed principally on BLD. Of course, Harry made sure to stock the money he received in his vaults to avoid it being robbed by malevolent people. However, he also made sure to create a vault for his girlfriend and had asked his account manager, a goblin named Sharp Eye, to insert some of his own money in them along with a large portion of what he received from the sweets. Because of him, a certain shop in Diagon Alley lost clients who weren't interested in some of its sweets, especially the BLD ones. Back to present, Harry was enjoying himself, but then he felt like he should move a bit and so went back on his feet to take a walk away from the mansion. "Mickey," he called out loudly before reaching the fences. "MSTR." Harry called for Mickey. The male house elf asked his MSTR after he appeared in thin air with a small pop. "Yes, can you go tell the girls that I will take a walk out for a while? I don't want them to worry about where I am," Harry explained to the house elf, who nodded eagerly. "Of course, MSTR. Mickey will do as you command. Good walk." Mickey kindly inquired before snapping his fingers and disappearing in a soft pop. Sighing, Harry then opened the fences before going outside. Closing the fences, the young lord then walked away from his domain while looking around. He could see people minding their own businesses, kissing, chatting, playing. It was a lovely sight to see. As he passed near the park, he stared at one particular bench with fondness, as it was where he met Kuroka a long time ago. He then walked near Kuo Academy, his precious school, and stared at the building with a soft smile on his face. He had grew to like studying there, even if it was annoying to be the constant topic of discussion from the student population. The teachers there were nice and he liked it there. Staring at the school, Harry couldn't help but thanking Muerte for enrolling him there, even if it was against his will. Somewhere, a certain primordial deity suddenly felt warm inside and allowed a smile to grace her pretty face as she was wondering why she felt this way. He didn't know how long he stood there, gazing at the school he attended, but when he finally regained his composure, an hour had passed. It was confirmed when he looked at his watch and mentally cursed himself for not watching the time before walking back toward his home as fast as he could. He didn't want it to deal with a bunch of angry girls if he could help it, but his girlfriends, especially those who reside at home, were really vigilant when it was about him. While they knew he could handle himself, that didn't stop them for being a bit overprotective and possessive. For them, if it wasn't for school or for other serious things, Harry shouldn't stay long out of the mansion. At first he had protested against this law, but sadly, he was quickly outnumbered and he had no choice but accepting it, even if he didn't like it. What he didn't know was that fate had reserved a new challenge for him, a challenge in the form of people from his past. Back to present, Harry was almost trotting all the way back to his domain, and the people around him either stepped away from his path wondering why he was in such a hurry or ignoring him completely. As he passed near the bench he met Kuroka. He made the mistake of looking at his watch and didn't saw the person walking in front of him. A chorus of grunt and groans echoed as he collided against the walker who was trying to get back on his feet. "I'm sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going," Harry began to say in English as he rubbed his head in pain. It's fine. I myself looking where I was. Wait, James, the newcomer asked him with shock. Harry blinked when he heard this and looked up to stare at the man he crashed into. It was a tall, well-built, darkly handsome man with fair skin, medium, lustrous black hair and striking grey eyes. The man's physical looked aristocratic, but his clothes showed the exact contrary. He didn't look poor, of course, but it wasn't the type of clothes a lord should wear. He almost wore the same attire than Harry. Those eyes, lilies, the man whispered softly to himself as he stared at the young lord with shock and stupor. Hearing this, Harry blinked at the man before looking at him deep in the eyes. He knew he had saw this man before and went deep in, though, looking through his memory to see where he had seen this man. A few seconds later, he froze as his green eyes widened in shock when he finally found where he had seen the man before him. There was only one guy he knew who matched this one perfectly, his godfather Sirius Orion Black. Harry? The man asked him softly in a voice filled with hope. Padfoot? Harry whispered back in shock as he got a good look at the man whose eyes were slowly watering as he stared back at him. The two stared at each other for a few seconds before enveloping each other into a tight embrace, refusing to let the other go. Harry had always wanted to see his godfather again, but was wary of going back to Britain after he took his lordships and didn't want to contact the man in case someone from the wizarding world would spy on him. "Oh Harry, I can't believe I finally found you after all those years," Sirius whispered tearfully as he hugged his godson. Harry was too emotional to respond as he hugged his godfather. He was just enjoying this moment, his worries about his girlfriends momentarily forgotten as he was only focused on the man hugging him. After more than 16 years, he finally found his godfather by pure luck. Now for once he could say it, "Thank you, luck." "Look of how much you've grown," Sirius remarked softly after the two broke their embrace. "And you didn't get any wrinkles despite you being an old man," Harry replied back with a grin which caused the two of them to laugh loudly with humor. "You razzle. Come here." Sirius inquired loudly with a laugh as he grabbed his godson's head under his arm before ruffling his hair affectionately with a fist. "Padfoot. Stop it, you mutt." Harry cried out in fake anger as he shoved the older man aside while laughing. However, as the two were enjoying each other's company, a new voice echoed from nearby, catching their attention. "Sirius." Turning their heads, godfather and godson saw two people approaching them. The first one was a tall man with a pale face, premature lines, and light brown hair with a hint in them gray. He sported a thin mustache and a rough beard on his face. When the man's smell reached him, Harry stiffened as he recognized the scent. The scent of a creature who attacked him many years ago, a werewolf. The second person was a young woman with a pale heart-shaped face and dark twinkling eyes who possessed pink short spiky hair. "Remus," Sirius called back when the tall man stopped before him. "Padfoot. What did I told you about running off?" the tall ma, whose name was apparently Remus, began to say to Sirius before his eyes landed on Harry. Behind him, the pink-haired young woman stared at Harry with wide eyes of shock and surprise. Both of them were speechless. Sirius shot them an amused grin before looking back at Harry, who was looking at the newcomer suspiciously. "Harry, don't you remember him?" The green-eyed young lord blinked at his godfather's question before looking carefully at the tall man. As he stared at the guy, Harry was also looking deep in his memory in hope of finding out who the man before him was. And he found it after a minute of research. "Mooney," he called out softly, and Remus' shocked face turned into an overjoyed one as he pulled Harry into a hug, crying softly. Harry blinked at first at the sudden action but then slowly hugged the crying man back as he remembered the time Remus would play with him when he was still a defenseless baby. The pink-haired woman, for her part, was staring at the scene with a wide smile on her face while Sirius looked just as happy. Remus, like himself, had spent a lot of time looking for his cub, and had traveled all around the world alongside his old friend to look for him. It was always fruitless, but now they finally found him. Remus, who was still hugging Harry, suddenly stiffened when a strange smell came from the boy, no, the young man he was embracing. "Harry, why do you smell like a lion?" the werewolf asked the green-eyed young man with a frown of confusion. Harry tensed when he heard it but then pulled himself away from the man to stare at him with crossed arms. "And pray tell, how can you say that?" he asked the man with a cold tone. The three other people flinched at the harsh tone, but Remus quickly regained his composure to answer. "Well, you see," the guy began to say before being interrupted by the green-eyed young lord in front of him. "I know you are a werewolf, Moony, so please stop stuttering, it's annoying," Harry inquired calmly with a roll of his eyes. Remus blinked in shock as he stared at Harry with wide eyes, and behind him, Sirius and the unnamed girl were just as speechless, wondering how he found out. "How did you dash?" "A magician never reveals his secret, you know," Harry replied back with a grin. This simple sentence caused Sirius to laugh loudly with humor while Remus rolled his eyes with amusement. The pink-haired young woman, for her part, was giggling in equal amusement as she looked at the men. "Now may I ask, what are you all doing here?" Harry asked them seriously after a moment of hilarity. "We were looking for you." Sirius answered him with a calm look on his face. "We spent many years traveling around the world to find you," Remus added quickly in a soft tone as he gazed at his former friend's son. "I see, and who is this charming lady?" Harry asked them as he glanced at the pink-haired young woman. "My, aren't you a charmer?" "My name's Tonks, just Tonks," the young woman responded with a smile, even if she looked dead serious at the end of her sentence. Harry stared at her with a seriously-like look before glancing at the two other men. Remus was giving him pleading look as if he was asking the younger man to not comment on this, while Sirius had a grin on his face as he winked at him before saying, "Her name is Nymphadora Tonks Black," Padfoot said mischievously as he glanced sideways at the pink-haired young woman who shot him a dangerous glare which could possibly melt ice. "Don't call me Nymphadora, you mutt!" Tonks cried out angrily to Sirius, who laughed loudly as he ducked a slap sent by the enraged girl. "Nymphadora, it's a gorgeous name," Harry commented to himself before blinking in surprise when Tonks' face was inches away from his. "Did you said something?" Nymphadora asked him with a sweet tone, too sweet in fact. No, I didn't." Harry replied back, raising his hands to show it. "Good, it would be a shame to castrate you, don't you think?" Tonks replied gently with a cold undertone which sent shivers down every man's spines. Harry laughed nervously as a sweat drop was seen on the right side of his face while Sirius leaned closer to Remus' ear to whisper as softly as possible, "Your girlfriend sure is scary." Remus, at those words, stiffened as his face turned as red as Rias's hair before he looking back at Sirius with an embarrassed glare. "She is not my girlfriend," the werewolf retorted sternly but in a soft tone so Tonks wouldn't, hopefully, hurt him. "But deep down you want it, don't you, Moony?" Sirius asked his longtime friend with an impish grin. Remus sighed deeply in annoyance before turning his head away, refusing to answer. He didn't deny or was in agreement with what Sirius just insinuated. Tonks was eyeing Remus with a saddened look on her face, as she did hear his comment, and Harry instantly understand that she wanted him, but he either was too blind to see it or was just a complete idiot. "Anyway, I'm sure you didn't came here just to find me, did you?" "I can tell there is something else," Harry inquired seriously in an attempt to change the subject. Remus shot him a thankful glance while Sirius and Tonks looked at each other with an unsure look on his face. Harry, stood where he was, eyeing the trio with fierce emerald green eyes. He attempted to use a bit of legilimency on them, but he decided against it. Some wizards were known to have perfect occlumency, so he was still wary of those three. However, he didn't need it to use legilimency because just by saying the nervous expressions, he could tell something bad was going to happen. He didn't know why, but for some reason. He was 100% sure it would be about him. No, surely not. He had nothing left in Great Britain. His family, if you could call them that, saw him as a squib and would not waste their precious time looking out for him like the rest of the wizard kind. "Well, you are right, there is more," Remus began to say in a hesitant tone before Sirius took over. "But it's best if we can talk about this in private." Harry glanced around and saw that there were some people eyeing them from all around the group. "All right, follow me," Harry inquired to the three wizards before heading toward his home. Sirius, Remus and Tonks glanced at each other for a second before going after him. Harry led them toward Peveril Mansion, and the sight of it caught the breaths of the trio following him. Before he opened the fences, he turned around to face the three wizards with a cold expression on his face. I want you to swear on your magic that you aren't here to bring me back with the Potters. And I want an oath where you also swear on your magic that you will tell no one of my whereabouts. Remus, Sirius and Tonks seemed startled and shocked by the demands, but they agreed. I, Sirius Orion Black, head of the noble and most ancient house of Black, swear on my magic and my life that I am not here to bring my godson back to the Potters, and I swear to not tell anyone about his whereabout. So mote it be. A glow surrounded Sirius' body before disappearing. His oath had been accepted. Nodding in satisfaction, Harry then turned his head to look at the other two, waiting for them to make their oaths. I, Remus Lupin, swear upon my magic and my life that I am not here to bring Harry Potter. Remus began to say before being interrupted by the green-eyed young lord. I am not a Potter, my name now is Harry Peveril Gryffindor Ravenclaw Slytherin Emery's Lefay. The three wizards in front of him stiffened in shock after those words left his mouth as they all stared at him with wide eyes. All right, I, Remus Lupin, swear upon my magic and my life that I am not here to bring Harry Peveril Gryffindor Ravenclaw Slytherin Emery's Lefay back to the Potters, and I swear to not tell anyone of his whereabouts. So mote it be. Like Sirius before him, a glowing light surrounded Remus's body before disappearing. There was only one oath to make, and Harry turned his head to look at the only girl in the group who looked embarrassed as she pulled out her wand. I, Nymphadora Tonks Black, swear on my magic and my life that I am not here to bring Harry Peveril Gryffindor Ravenclaw Slytherin Emery's Lefay back to the Potters, and I swear to not tell anyone of his whereabouts. So mote it be. Again, a glowing light surrounded the young woman's body for a moment before disappearing. Like the two before her, her oath had been recognized and accepted. Harry clapped his hands with satisfaction before opening the fences to let them inside. Harry. Who owns this place? Sirius asked his godson as he followed the younger man inside. Huh? Oh, it's mine actually, Harry replied with a nonchalant shrug. The three gaped at him with shock as they stared at him with wide eyes. When they entered the domain, the wizards all froze when they felt the wards. They were shocked by how powerful they were, more powerful than those at Hogwarts. Sirius and Remus especially were speechless and were wondering how Harry managed to make them. Harry, noticing their shocked expressions, chuckled under his breath as he led them toward the library, the only place he knew they would be in relative peace. However, as he entered it, he was still wondering where the girls were, as he didn't saw any of them yet. Strange. Shrugging, he invited his guests to sit on some couches he summoned, much to the shock of the wizards because he did wandless magic and wordless magic. But what shocked them the most was fast that he did magic, as he was supposed to be a squib, a wizard without magic. Fanny. Harry called out loudly, and near him appeared the female house elf with a small pop. MSTR. Harry called for Fanny. Yes, can you bring us some tea please? Harry asked the elf politely, who bowed before disappearing as quickly as possible. So what is it you wanted to tell me about? Harry asked the three wizards in front of him with a stern expression on his face. Before we answer your question, would you mind if you answer some of ours, Harry? Sirius asked his godson with hesitation in his voice. The green-eyed young lord opened his mouth to answer when Fanny appeared with the tea. She served it to the four before leaving with a respectful bow. Harry drank a bit of his tea before looking back at the trio in front of him to answer. I don't mind, so who starts first? He asked them with a raised brow. Harry, can you tell us where you were after the Potters abandoned you? Remus asked him with a cringe and a soft growl in his throat. The young man's stern face turned into a scowl as he literally snarled his answer. After Dumbledore persuaded my parents to give me up, he left me on the doorsteps of number 4 Private Drive. The three wizards snorted at the nickname Harry gave to the most powerful person in the wizarding world, but then the men's eyes widened in horror as they stared at him. Number 4. Private Drive? Albus left you with Petunia? Sirius asked his godson with shock and a bit of anger. Harry nodded with a cold look on his face before adding in an equal tone, for the next few years there, I was abused by the Dursleys badly. I was beaten, starved, bullied by everyone in this cursed place. Even the teachers ignored my suffering as everyone in private drive listened to Petunia's lies about me being a troublemaker and a delinquent. As those words left Harry's mouth, Sirius and Remus felt nothing but pure anger at this. Sirius had met Petunia once and he would never forget how terrible she had been toward her own sister and was furious at Albus for leaving his godson with such hateful people. Remus's internal wolf wanted revenge on the Dursley for their treatment toward his cub, a member of his small pack. But one day I was 9 at the time someone saved me. She helped me to become the man I am today. She gave me hope. I was no longer the freak of private drive but Lord Harry Peveril, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, Emery's Lefay, Harry added with a soft smile on his face as he recalled the memory of that day. Sirius and Remus, who had both cringed at the word freak, both smiled with some happiness when they heard this, despite the two of them still being furious about the fact Albus left their cub to Petunia and her despicable family. Tonks seemed heartbroken that the true savior of the wizarding world was treated like this, worse than a house elf. Harry, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for Sirius began to say before being interrupted by the young man in front of him. It's fine, Padfoot, I know you're not responsible for what happened that night 17 years ago. It's all Dumbledore's fault and the Potters. But Harry, how could remember that night? You were just a baby at the time. Remus asked him with confusion and a bit of curiosity. Let's just say I have a good memory, Harry replied vaguely, and Remus, being the intellectual one in the trio, instantly understood as his mouth formed a "oh. I see you have hyperthymesia." Hyper what? Sirius asked him dumbly. Hyperthymesia is an uncommon ability that allows a person to spontaneously recall a vast number of personal events or experiences. Tonks responded with an impressive look on her face as she stared at Harry. "Oh," was the only thing Sirius managed to say as his mind processed what he just heard. The other three shot him amused glances before returning back into a serious look to discuss their current situation. "So Harry, how did you become the head of all those houses?" Tonks asked the green-eyed young lord with inquisitive eyes. "The person I told you about helped me to acquire them. We went at Gringotts the following night we met and I cast myself out of the Potter family. I wasn't a squib after all." Sirius, Tonks and Remus nodded in agreement as they saw him performing magic before their eyes a few moments ago. So he was everything but a squib like Dumbledore, the Order of the Phoenix or Voldemort's lackeys believed he was. "Then I claimed the lordships my loving parents never claimed, Gryffindor and Peveril from James Potter, and Ravenclaw, Emery's, and Lefay from Lily Potter." "What about Slytherin?" Remus asked the young lord with a frown as he and the other two didn't understand why he was the head of the House of Snakes. "By right of conquest," was Harry's nonchalant answer. Sirius sighed deeply as he rubbed his forehead as if he was getting a headache while Remus and Tonks nodded in understanding. But then the werewolf realized something and looked back at the young man in front of him before asking. "Harry, isn't Peveril the name of the third brother in the Tale of the Three Brothers?" "It is. But how can that be? It's just a fairy tale." Sirius and Tonks inquired at the same time before looking at each other. "Jinx." Harry stared at them blankly for a second before slowly turning his head to look at Remus, who was rubbing his head with a hand with exasperation mixed with amusement. "Are they always like this?" "Yes, and sometimes I feel like the only mature one in the group," Remus responded to Harry with a sigh. "Hey!" Sirius and Tonks cried out at the same time with a pout on their faces after they both heard his little comment about them. Harry snorted in amusement before becoming serious again. The three brothers really existed. Even the Deathly Hallows existed. Ignotus Peveril, the youngest brother, is my ancestor as a descendant of his merged with someone from the Potter line. Sirius and Tonks, like Remus, were shocked by the revelation and were unable to say anything when Harry started to speak again. "I'm sure you know of James' invisibility cloak, right?" "Yes, we used it a lot of times when we were students at Hogwarts. It was the good old time," Sirius responded with a hint of nostalgia as he remembered the time he, Wormtail, Prongs and Moony were still united as one. "Are you saying that James' old cloak is one of the Hallows?" Remus asked Harry once he realized why the young lord was asking them that. "It is one of the Hallows. When I claimed the lordship of House Peveril, I was able to summon the Hallows as they rightfully belonged to me," Harry responded with a calm expression, and to prove his point, he decided to summon the Hallows right there and then. First he started with the invisibility cloak, which surprised the three wizards as they heard that James lost it a long time ago. Then he summoned the Philosopher's Stone, which earned shocked gasps from the trio. Apparently, the last owner of the stone was Nicholas Flamel, Dumbledore's mentor and friend, who died alongside his wife of all age after the two of them lived for a long time. "The Philosopher's Stone, I can't believe it," Tonks commented as she looked at the little rock in Harry's left hand. "Now the last one," Harry began to say as he conjured the stone to summon the last Hallow, the Elder Wand. "Wait a minute, isn't that Dumbledore's wand?" Sirius asked his godson in shock as he stared at the stick. "It is, but now it is mine by right," Harry replied with a grin as he twisted the wand between his fingers before conjuring it. Sirius then laughed loudly, which caused the other three to look at him with confusion as they didn't understand why he was in such a state of hilarity. For a moment, Lord Black was like this, but then he slowly calmed down to look at them once he noticed their confusion. "You literally took Dumbledore's wand right under his nose. It is the best prank ever." After those words left his mouth, he laughed again and was quickly followed by Harry and Tonks, while Remus retained his composure even if he was chuckling himself in amusement, as it was indeed hilarious. He remembered the day he had seen Albus with a new wand and had asked the old wizard where was his old one. Dumbledore looked so embarrassed that day as he softly responded that he lost it, which was a great shame in wizard kind for someone to lost its wand. After a few moments of laughters, everyone slowly calmed down while trying to catch their breaths. Remus then cleared his throat, which caught the others' attention on him, before looking at Harry with a hint of nervousness. "Harry, if you have the Hallows, does this mean you are well the MSTR of death?" Sirius and Tonks both stiffened at this before looking over at Harry with nothing but pure interest in their eyes. Harry sighed deeply before looking back at the three waiting wizards with an unsure look on his face. "Harry, we won't judge you. If you will still be our cub?" Sirius inquired him gently when he noticed the younger man's hesitation. "The mud is right, we will always stand by your side no matter what you are," Remus added gently, ignoring Sirius's glare, as he looked at the green-eyed young lord who shot the both of them a grateful look before answering. "I am the MSTR of death." The two men both nodded at him, and as they said, none of them looked disgusted or horrified by his answer and instead harbored supportive look on their faces. Tonks was the only one who had a disbelieved look on her face as she looked at Harry with wide eyes of shock. "Does it mean you can control death?" the pink-haired young woman asked him with curiosity after a moment of awkward silence. "Yes, but I also became immortal in the process," Harry replied with a nervous chuckle. His answer caused the three in front of him to gap at him with shock. "You cannot die?" Sirius asked softly to no one in particular as he stared at the ground with disbelief. "That pretty much the definition of immortality, Padfoot," Harry cooed to his godfather teasingly, who shot him a mock glare while everyone was laughing with humor before being joined by Sirius. "You would be a great marauder, Prongslet," Sirius remarked out loud as he laughed, but then the atmosphere became tense and cold as the entire room darkened. Gulping, the three wizards looked toward where the killing intent came from and stiffened in fright when they saw Harry's eyes glowing with power as a darkish aura was surrounding his body. "Don't call me Prongslet. I am not, and I will never be James Potter. He is not my father." Harry snarled at them in a growl-like voice that sent shivers down their spines. Remus Interwolf was screaming at him to bow to the young man before him, but the man was too busy shaking in fright to listen. Sirius was as pale as a ghost while Tonk's pink hair were now as white as her face. Noticing their scared faces, Harry quickly calmed down and the room returned to its previous state as if nothing happened. Even his eyes stopped glowing and were now at their usual state. "Sorry about that, it's just that I don't like being compared or seen as James Potter," Harry explained to them as he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. But they all heard the tone laced with venom when he said the name of his former father. "It's okay," Sirius inquired back with a wave of his head as if it was not a big deal. "DMN it, you're scary when you are angry, Tonks commented once she regained her composure. "I get that a lot," Harry replied with a small grin which caused the two other men to chuckle. "Now can you tell who was this person you told us about earlier?" Remus asked him once he stopped chuckling. "You wouldn't believe me if I tell you." Oh. Make us, Tonks inquired defiantly as she crossed her arms over her melons. Death, was Harry's answer. For a moment, nothing could be heard except silence. Harry had a straight face but internally he was dying of laughter at the sight of 3 shocked faces in front of him. 5 minutes later, they stayed like this until Sirius snorted. Stop pulling our legs, Harry, will you? Now can you please tell us who helped you many years ago? The head of House Black asked his godson as it was clear he didn't believe him. Padfoot? I don't think he is joking, Remus inquired to his longtime friend when he saw how serious Harry looked. Huh? Sirius blinked before looking over at Harry, who really serious and stern as he stared back at them. Wait, are you serious? No, that's you, Padfoot. Harry retorted back, which caused Remus and Tonks to groan while Sirius laughed loudly. DMN at Harry, Tonks grumbled as she hid her head in her hands while shooting a glare at Harry, whose only response was an impish grin. Back to topic, Harry, are you saying that death itself helped you? Remus asked the young lord quickly to avoid another joke/pun. I am. She took care of me, taught me what she knows, gave me a familiar. I own her everything, Harry explained to them with a fond smile. Elsewhere, Muerte, who was leading a spirit to the afterlife, suddenly felt warmth inside her chest and couldn't retain a radiant smile to appear on her face. Wait, she? Death is a girl? Sirius asked his godson with disbelief. Yes, why do you ask? Harry asked him back with a curious raised brow, even if internally he might have an idea of what his godfather was about to say. He wasn't disappointed. Many always assumed that death was a male entity, Sirius began to answer before Tonks took over. Why always a man? Are you secretly implying that girls are inferiors? Sirius made a peace gesture with his hands as a sweat drop was seen falling from the right side of his pale head. No, of course not. I'm just saying what many thought, that all. I hope you are, because I would gladly report this to Mom if it wasn't the case, Tonks retorted back in a dark tone which caused Sirius to pale drastically. Harry gulped in fright as he and Remus glanced at each other, as both of them were thinking the same thing. Scary. Why women are so terrifying when pissed out, he screamed into his mind as he remembered all the times his girlfriends were kinda angered about something, mostly about him. Anyway, you said something about a familiar. Can you show it to us? Remus asked him in an attempt to change the subject and hopefully help his longtime friend in his predicament. Harry grinned deviously as he imagined the reaction he would create the moment his familiar would appear in the room, and opened his mouth to call out loudly. Hedwig. Suddenly, in a burst of flame, appeared Hedwig in all her glory. She was 2 rooms away from the library as her burning day was a week ago. It had been fun to see Ravel's and Asia's shocked faces when Hedwig let herself being consumed by fire, but then he remembered the cooing sounds the 2 blondes made when a baby phoenix appeared among the ashes. Back to present, Remus, Tonks and Sirius all gasped when the white royal phoenix appeared in the room, and they all watched as Hedwig circled them for a moment before landing on a perch near Harry, who reached out to her with his right arm to pet her above her head. No way, a royal phoenix, Remus mumbled in awe under his breath as he stared at the white bird, who was enjoying the attention she was receiving from her human, completely ignoring the others. DMN, does it mean you are light? Sirius asked him almost dumbly, as everyone knew that phoenixes were light creatures. I'm neither light or dark, I am gray. I know killing is wrong, but I'm willing to do it to protect those I love. Harry replied back sharply and sternly as he glared at the wizards, who openly flinched at the hard tone. Hedwig, seeing her MSTR's current state, opened her beak to let out a comforting song that quickly calmed him to the point that the glare disappeared completely. Harry smiled warmly at his familiar before summoning a piece of bacon, which was instantly consumed by a greedy white phoenix the second she saw it. Isn't that ironic? The boy who lived is not a golden boy and a champion of the light, but a grey lord willing to kill. Tonks remarked with a small chuckle once the shock of the phoenix's apparition faded. Instantly, she tensed as she realized what she just said, as she clapped a hand on her mouth with wide eyes. Sirius and Remus both stiffened after those words left Tonks' mouth, and they glanced at Harry without turning their heads before paling drastically when they saw his narrowed eyes and the piercing look he was giving the 3. What are you talking about? Jacob is the boy who lived. Not me. Well, it's what we wanted to discuss with you actually, Sirius replied with an unsure tone on his face as he feared what would be his godson's reaction at the news. Harry's eyes narrowed dangerously, but a soft thrill from Hedwig calmed him down as he returned back into a much calmer behavior, even if his eyes still showed his true feelings about this. He didn't say anything and instead just looked at his guests, waiting for them to talk. The three wizards looked at each other, unsure of who should announce the bad news to the young man before them, as they knew he would surely be angered by it. Remus, being the diplomatic one, decided to do it while preparing himself for the lashing he was surely about to receive. Harry, a lot of things happened in the wizarding world recently. The Dark Lord is back and reformed his army of Death Eaters. And? Tell me why this concerned me. The wizarding world and all of England can be burned to the ground for all I care. Harry snarled at the wizards, who gulped in fright at the reaction while being shocked by the lack of sympathy Harry was showing right now. A few months ago, in the Department of Mysteries, there was a battle between the Order of the Phoenix and Voldemort's Death Eaters. The Dark Lord wanted to retrieve something in there, a prophecy concerning him and the Chosen One, Remus explained as calmly as possible before being interrupted by Harry. I already know of this prophecy of yours. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. Sirius, Remus and Tonks froze in stupor as they stared at him with shock. They weren't prepared for this. None of them thought that he would somehow knew of the prophecy, as he weren't in England for years. Seeing that they were too shocked to speak, Harry reopened his mouth in a harsh tone. But this prophecy is fake. It's nothing more than a piece of CRP made by some fake people just to get attention. The three wizards, again, flinched at the harsh tone, but they couldn't help but being in agreement, as Sybil Trelawney, the woman who made the prophecy, was anything but a sane person. But she did predicted Pettigrew's escape a long time ago, so maybe she wasn't a total fake. Why do you think the prophecy is fake? Tonks asked him with some curiosity, even if deep down she was a bit nervous. Is your prophecy made from the Pythia of Delphi? Harry asked her back with a stern look on his face which Hedwig mirrored. No, Nymphadora replied in a soft tone as she glanced at the two mature men beside her. Then it is fake, only the prophecies coming from the Pythia are true, Harry replied with a shrug before drinking a bit of tea. It's cold, he softly commented as he drank the last remaining of the tea. Who is the Pythia? Sirius asked him out loud as he frowned in confusion. Harry opened his mouth to answer, but it was Remus who answered him. She is the high priestess of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi in Greece. She is an oracle, in short. I see, but about seers? Sirius asked his longtime friend with a raised brow. As for him, seers and oracles were the same things. Seers are supposedly people who had the ability to see into the future with their inner eye, as they called it. It's just a bunch of charlatans, all of them. Harry hissed with disgust as if he was talking about some trashes. Again, Hedwig thrilled again to calm her human, who shot her a warm smile before petting her soft feathers, earning a soft coo-like sound from the noble white bird, who nuzzled his hand affectionately in return of the attention. Regardless, the wizarding world, especially Dumbledore and the Dark Lord, thinks it is a true prophecy and expect the Chosen One to defeat the Death Eaters, Remus added quickly to change the subject, as it was obvious that Harry had a dislike of fortune-tellers. Again, what does it have to do with me? Harry asked the werewolf in an impatient tone as he glared at the trio. He had a bad feeling about this all of a sudden. Remus glanced at his fellow wizards before taking a deep breath to answer as calmly as possible. Harry, there were the name of the people concerned, yours and Voldemort. He cringed when he said the Dark Lord's name. What? Harry jumped on his feet with a look of fury on his face as the room around them started to darken again. I am not, and I will never be, Britain's little savior. As I said, they can all rot in hell for all I care. Harry snarled in a furious growl-like tone as his eyes glowed with power and his body slowly enveloped itself with shadows. I know. We came here to warn you that now the whole wizarding world is looking for you. Sirius quickly explained as he looked at his godson with a serious expression. How dare they? They abandoned me to hell on earth and now they expect me to save their pathetic asses. Who does they think they are? Harry screamed again with nothing but pure rage as somewhere else in the mansion, the house elves were cowering in fear. Hedwig herself wasn't enchanted by the news. She knew what the Wizard of Britain did to her human and she wanted nothing more than to skin them alive for hurting her little MSTR. However, she knew that being angry won't solve anything so she instantly nuzzled her human on the hand while thrilling Softy in a comforting manner. To her relief, her charm seemed to work as Harry was slowly calming down but was still glaring daggers at the wizards as if they were responsible for this. Sirius and Remus, along with Tonks, wisely decided to let him calm down as they knew that if they dared to say something else, it would only anger the young man even more. What about Harry? Well, in short, he was furious. For years he had tried everything to not even think about England, the cursed place he had lived for the first years of his life, and now people who willingly left him want him back to save them. Curse them all. He will show them who he really is. Internally, he was cursing whatever duty for doing this to him as again fate and or luck showed him how much they hated his guts. All he wanted was a peacefully life here in Japan without having to think about his BRTH country or the people who wronged him, but again he hoped for nothing. Looking at the three wizards in front of him, Harry felt bad for taking his anger at them like that and so decided to at least apologize for his action as it was not proper for a young man like him to do such things. I'm sorry for this, Harry mumbled with a deep sigh as he rubbed the back of his head. It's all right, cub, we can understand, Sirius gently replied as he pulled the younger man into a comforting embrace which was quickly joined by Remus. We will be there for you, Harry, all you need to do is asking, the werewolf added in a gentle tone as he hugged the younger man alongside Sirius. Behind them the three were unaware of Tonks, who was taking pictures with her phone with stars in her eyes. Wait, what? Thank you, Harry inquired to the two men with a thankful smile before his expression turned serious again. Now I have to warn some friends of mine about this. Sirius and Remus looked at each other for a moment before nodding. It would be wise indeed. If a Death Eater or one of the member of the Order found their cub's friends, it wouldn't take long for them to find him and bring him back in England. Harry, we have something else to tell you, Remus began to say with hesitation. What is it, Moony? Well, Dumbledore and Cornelius, the Minister of Magic, both ordered their minions to bring you back at all cost and to not hesitate to use strength if necessary, Sirius replied with a growl in his throat as he recalled what he heard from a spy of his. Harry growled alongside his godfather while Hedwig thrilled with anger as her entire body surrounded itself with white flame, clearly showing her feelings for those wizards. Tisk, I always thought English wizards were idiots. No offense, Harry began to say before glancing at Sirius and Remus apologetically. None taken. They both said at the same time in perfect synchronization before blinking at each other in surprise. A sigh that caused Harry and Tonks to laugh loudly with humor. So what now? Harry asked the trio after a moment of pure hilarity. Well, we were here mostly to warn you, so maybe we can just go back to England, Remus replied with incertitude as he rubbed the back of his head. Come on, Moony. We just find him after all those years and you already want to leave him again? Sirius inquired his longtime friend with a mock glare, which caused the werewolf to roll his eyes at him with amusement. So Harry, how is your life here in Japan? Any friends? Or maybe a girlfriend? Sirius asked his godson, who didn't have time to answer as a certain werewolf stepped in. Padfoot. Remus cried out at his friend, who shot him a raised brow of confusion. What? What did I say? The head of House Black asked with confusion as he looked back at his longtime friend. In the background, Tonks was grumbling about how Sirius was such an idiot while Harry was chuckling with pure amusement, with Hedwig shaking her head, wondering how someone could be so stupid. It's all right, Moony. To answer you, Padfoot, life was pretty good here in Japan until you came here to announce me those news. Yes, I have a large bunch of friends, and yes, I have girlfriends, Harry replied to his godfather, who blinked at the last part. Huh, Harry, don't you mean girlfriend? Tonks asked him in hope she heard him right. I mean what I said, girlfriends, the green-eyed young lord replied back with a grin. How many? Sirius asked with disbelief before he received a punch on the top of his head by Remus O.W. Mooney. The werewolf grinned at him before looking back at Harry when the young man answered his godfather's question. 7. I'm so proud of you. Sirius cried out in joy as he hugged his godson as tight as he could. In the background, Remus gaped at Harry with shock, unable to say a word, while Tonks slapped her face with a hand, grumbling something about hormonal teenagers. Of course you are, you dirty mutt. Harry replied back teasingly before punching his godfather's shoulder playfully. How can you be proud of this, Sirius? Harems are illegal. Tonks hissed to Sirius, who flinched before looking back at Harry with disapproval. Maybe in the western part of the world, yes, but it's fairly common in the eastern part, especially in the supernatural world, Harry replied to the young woman with a shrug. Supernatural world? Tonks asked him with a raised brow of confusion, while Sirius and Remus seemed just as confused. Harry shot the trio a blank look. Are wizards that ignorant of the rest of the world? Sighing deeply, the green-eyed young lord looked back at them with a calm expression as he explained softly. The supernatural world is a vast and ancient world whose existence predates time itself. It is where mythological beings such as gods, devils, fallen angels, dragons, and various otherworldly creatures resided. Like the wizarding world, the supernatural world is hidden from humanity. Remus, Sirius and Tonks were speechless as none of them knew the existence of the supernatural world. However, the werewolf had more questions. How do you know this, Harry? He asked the green-eyed young man with interest. I have a good teacher, that and my friends and girlfriends are everything but humans. Harry responded with a grin on his face as he looked at the werewolf. I see, Remus mumbled in astonishment as he shot a glance towards Sirius, who returned it before looking at his godson. What are your girlfriends? I'm just curious. Harry shot him an amused raised brow before answering nonchalantly, let's see, there are Ophis and Tiamat, both of them are dragons. Akeno and Seraphol are devils. Rainier is a fallen angel. Gabriel is an angel, and Yasaka is a kitsune. Sirius, Remus and Tonks again were speechless as they stared at Harry with gaping mouths. After a moment of silence, the head of House Black shook his head to regain his composure before looking back at his godson. As long as you are happy, cub, I don't care who you are with, Sirius said gently before pulling the younger man into a hug, which Harry returned wholeheartedly. Thank you, Padfoot, you are the best, the green-eyed young lord whispered to his godfather as he hugged him tightly. I know I am, cub, Sirius whispered back with a hint of arrogance which caused the both of them to chuckle with amusement. The two then pulled away from each other, smiling, and Harry turned his head toward Remus and Tonks, who smiled back at him. Harry now knew that he had their supports, and he was thankful for that, as they were the only wizards he could trust at the moment. After that, the three of them chatted with each other, telling stories or speaking about magic, and Harry was enjoying his time with his godfather and Remus, as they were the only people in the wizarding world you care about him, while Tonks was kind of friendly to hang out with, and it was clear she had an attraction toward Remus, which caused Harry to grin at the werewolf as he now had a reason to tease him. The danger that was the wizarding world was momentarily forgotten as they were busy enjoying each other's company. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 9. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Asian Lion Heart 310 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.